This is our contrastive analysis project comparing Cape Verde Creole to English. Our names are Anna Noon and Alexis Pike. Throughout this presentation, you will also hear a third grade student speaking in Creole in response to certain questions that were posed to him. He will also then translate his response to English, comparing and really providing that audio recording of the language.
Cape Verde is a group of 10 islands off the west coast of Africa. The islands fought for and gained their independence from Portugal in 1975, and 9 out of the 10 islands are inhabited. Although they all speak Cape Verdean Creole, the islands have different dialects or variants as they call them. The southern islands, Brava, Fogo, Santiago, and Mayo, speak Sotavento Creole dialects, whereas the northern islands of Boa, Vista, Sal, Sao Nicolau, Sao Vicente, and Santo Ateo speak Barlavento Creole dialects.
I know you went to Cape Verde last year. Can you tell me about your trip?
Primeiro não vai fogo, depois não vai a barco, depois não vai praia, depois não vai bravo. Não fica lá por 2 meses. Brinca com o irmão se cachorro, anate gato, para brincar com, depois irmão ele toma gato para morder. Outro dia ele tem neve, é só sair. And in English, it's first we all went to Fog. We had to take a boat, and we went to Praia, and we had to drive a car to Brav. And there I stayed for 2 months in my aunt's house. And I would go to my cousin's house to play with his dog. And I found a cat. I stayed with it for a week, but then my cousin saw me with it, and he said it already had an owner.
Some of the Cape Verde Creole background. It's one of the oldest African European languages still spoken. The race and culture of the island is a mix between Portuguese and African culture, and the native language of Cape Verdeans is Cape Verde Creole, although Portuguese is the official language on the islands. Creole was officially adopted in 1998 and accepted by the government as the only way to write Cape Verde Creole in 2005. Currently, it is only used for literary purposes and not in an official capacity.
In terms of education in Cape Verde, education is done primarily in Portuguese, but students do learn and speak Creole at home. The literacy rate of the adult population is 76%. Males are 86% and females are 69%. And Cape Verde has been working very hard to improve their education system. Specifically, they have started to promote preschool. They are making primary school universally available. They are improving and expanding secondary school. They are developing higher education on the islands, as well as increasing adult education and literacy. In terms of some school statistics, preschool in Cape Verde is ages 3 to 6. It is optional, and about 66% of children in this age group are enrolled. Students then move to primary school, which is ages 7 to 12, and it is free and mandatory. But according to statistics, only 97% of children in this age group are enrolled. Following primary school, students move to secondary school, which is ages 13 and up. It is optional and it is with tuition that is based on family income. 70.36% of children in this age group are enrolled. Following secondary school, there is an option for higher education, but most students at this point choose to study abroad. Schools in Cape Verde are still being developed, and only 21% of this age group is in fact enrolled. Many students instead choose to go into the family trade business, following their family's job and really getting involved with that career path instead.
Language origin and history. This language originates back to the 15th and 16th century during slave trade as a pidgin language. It was based on Portuguese, in which business was conducted, and Africans who were brought to Cabo Verde as slaves used the pidgin which then developed into a fully formed Creole language. So again, it's a combination of African, French, English, and other European languages passed down to their children.
We are now going to discuss the linguistic features and anticipated difficulties that a student might face.
Phonology. Creole or Cape Verde Creole consists of 23 letters and 4 digraphs. As you can see there, we have the alphabet. There's lots of consonant blends. However, there's the 4 digraphs, NH, TX, DJ, and LH. And then compared to English, where we have 26 letters with many consonant blends and digraphs, we also have vowel digraphs as well. Here's just a little snippet of their alphabet. And again, here are just some examples of the English blends and digraphs that we have. As you can see, bull, burr, ch, cool are just some of them. And some English phonetic vowels and how to pronounce them and the differences between some of the words. Creole vowels and consonants. So the way that some of them are pronounced varies based on the letter. So as you can see, the I can be pronounced as an oral or nasal in the front and it's close, as some of the other letters are pronounced in the central, open, mid, or open areas. All are pronounced with oral and nasal. And then the consonants, you can see in this chart how some of them are in the labial section as well as dental, postal, veolar, the velar, and the uvular area.
In terms of morphology in Cape Verde Creole, Creole words have multiple morphemes, and their vocabulary comes mainly from Portuguese, with over 90% of their words having some sort of foundation from Portuguese. Apostrophes are used to show an elated vowel, which is a vowel that does not make a sound. Mood and aspect are expressed through the presence or absence of certain morphemes. This is a little bit different than English. However, both Creole and English do have words with multiple morphemes. But vocabulary in English can be Anglo-Saxon, coming from the native origin, or Romantic, Latin, or Greek, coming from a foreign origin. As you can see from this graphic below, it just shows where different vocabulary words in English come from. And even though over 90% of Cape Verdean Creole words are derived from Portuguese, very different from the English language, the grammar is very different. which makes it extremely difficult for an untrained Portuguese native speaker to even understand a basic conversation. On the other hand, the grammar also shows a lot of similarities with other Creoles, whether their language is Portuguese based or not. For Creole syntax, the sentence structure follows the pattern of subject, verb, object, adjective, where in English, the sentence structure follows the pattern of subject, verb, adjective, object. So the adjective and the object are switched. Creole also has double negatives in their language. So, for example, in English, it translates to nothing I didn't find, which we would say as I didn't find anything. English has the past, present, and future tenses with many variations. So the past simple, past continuous, the present simple, present continuous, as you can see on the chart below. However, Creole does not have a specific verb form for the future. If you look at the graphic below the Creole side, the perfective aspect of the present tense is mda, but the past tense is mdaba.
Semantics. In Creole, nouns are assigned a gender. Most words are masculine, as in where in English, nouns are not assigned a gender. English uses prepositions as he, she, we, etc. The adjectives in Creole agree with the gender, but oftentimes not with the number of the noun, so only animated nouns have the gender inflection, such as humans or animals. So we have an example of how to say pig. So el porco, porca, determines if it's a male pig or a female. Regular and irregular verbs in Creole. The regular would be mda, as Anna said in the last slide, I gave, I have given, whereas irregulars, tem or te, to have. Regular and irregular verbs in English follow kind of the same guidelines. And in Creole, they also have cognates. So for learners, English language learners, that would be something that you could access in your classroom as well.
Pragmatics, oracy, and communication rules. In Creole, when walking past someone, it's considered disrespectful not to say hello. You will often see people greeting one another as they are walking down the street, even if they don't necessarily know the person. Creole culture is very respectful of and address elders and family members with a title. So, for example, mom, dad, mama, vovo, hi. They consciously change tone based on mood, situation, and the authority present, which we also do in English, based on who we are communicating with. Conversations begin with a greeting in both languages, but in Creole, the conversations, even if they are more formal, it often includes personal discussions of family or other important personal aspects of life. It is acceptable to be late in Creole. They have a little bit more relaxed timing. Time tends to be viewed in a fluid sense. Meetings often start hours after their stated start time. Parties begin way after midnight, and the concept of being in a hurry is virtually non existent. In English, we have figurative language and idioms as a part of our everyday conversations, but Creole is very literal, so teaching into the figurative language would be very important. Creole speakers tend to be very blunt and honest, whereas in English, we sometimes are passive aggressive or reserved with our speech. So, making sure that if we hear something from a Creole speaker, we don't necessarily take it to be rude. That's not always the intent. In Creole, formal and business greetings are done in Portuguese, as that is still the recognized language of the nation.
Spelling and orthography. It took many years to develop an alphabet for Creole that encompasses Portuguese and African origins that could be used with all dialects. So Creole is their alphabet is the Alupec, and currently it's not recognized as a written system yet. Cape Verdeans use Portuguese for their writing. Learning to write in English will definitely be a big challenge for English language learners, as letters and associated sounds in Creole Portuguese, and English are different, which can cause misconceptions between the three written forms. Portuguese is a phonetically written language, and English is not always, so they should certainly cause some initial confusion for else.
Some anticipated misconceptions when learning English for Creole speakers. The first one that we are going to discuss is plurals. In Creole, articles and nouns are turned to be plural. So, for example, the's houses, whereas in English, the noun is only made plural, so the houses. The adjective order can also be a misunderstanding at first because in Creole, the sentence structure follows the pattern of subject, verb, object, adjective. I want the tea hot. In English, sentence structure follows the pattern of sentence, verb, adjective, object. I want hot tea. Gender identification in Creole, the animated nouns have their gender stated using an ending, as Alexis mentioned earlier, porcu, porca for pig. Porca signifies that the pig is a girl. In English, animated nouns are not assigned a gender, so pig. For the writing system, as discussed in the slide before, Portuguese is phonetically written and English does not always follow that same pattern. In Portuguese, lagartixa, which means lizard, the X makes the ch sound, whereas in English, said can also be a possible misconception. Cultural norms between Creole and English.
So as you could hear from our recording, they value family time. Family gatherings are very important to them. They like to cook as a family and um, share folk tales. Storytelling is a big part. They value music, and specific type of music that they have is morna, and usually this type of music expresses patriotism when they're in mourning. It expresses love. There's an example to follow on that. They're a very generous group of people, and when you have bilingual children or students, they begin learning both English and Creole with their families beginning at infancy. Here's an example of one of the Morna songs. It's in Creole and the translation to English. So as you can see here, it's about their islands and just their passion and their anguish that they've had to face. It talks about their climate and it goes into some of the love that they have for their people and their area.
Have another 7.
As you can hear in the recording, as Alexis just also discussed, family is very important to them. Family members kiss on the cheek when they see one another as a greeting. You will also see a lot of touching during conversations, especially with family members and once people feel comfortable. As a result, they often stand in close proximity to one another, utilizing lots of hand gestures. A more formal greeting is a handshake. And as discussed earlier, saying hello is very important to them or greeting others, even if they don't necessarily know the person. And smiling at others goes hand in hand with that, and it is welcoming and typical, again, even if the other person is not necessarily someone that they know. Traditional gender roles in Cape Verde, women are normally responsible for taking care of the home, whereas men are mostly responsible for making money for the family. This does not necessarily always happen. However, it is a traditional gender role. In rural areas, parents teach children their trade or job, which also attributes to the low percentage of individuals enrolled in college or a post secondary education. Women can also be a source of income. However, men are mostly responsible for making that money. Women also have some jobs along with their house, but more or less it's the men's job. Violence and discrimination against women is a common and pertinent issue the country is working to address. Um, it is at the forefront of some discussions within the country and the government, as it is a very prominent issue.
Lastly, just some helpful tips and some things to think about that might have an impact on classroom and instruction. When you're having conversations with a student, it's important to sit in a close proximity with them. They'll often will use touch, like a hand on the shoulder, things like that. Long greetings multiple times a day, making sure that, coming back from an enrichment or lunch, if not with the students, expect to have a greeting from them and a conversation with them at times, if they're able to speak to you. Again, it's also considered to be rude to eat in front of others without sharing. So I know at my school, at least, students are not allowed to share food. So if you're seeing this, and maybe others are reprimanding them, this is why they think it's rude to not share with others while eating. They could be offended, find it strange when others do not willingly share with them.
In terms of goals for students, they might not want to go to college. They might not have a college oriented mindset as higher education is still developing in the country. They instead might focus on a specific trade, a lot of times the same one that their family is very much involved with. As mentioned previously, using figurative language and idioms can be difficult for Cape Verde students, as the idioms and figurative language will have to be explained and defined. For example, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. That figurative language would need to be explained that no, you don't actually want to eat a horse, but you're just very hungry.
Snapping can also have a different meaning for these students. And I know in my classroom, at times I catch myself here and there snapping if I'm reading in a small group here and there, and I want someone's attention who's outside of group to maybe lower their voice or things. I'll maybe just like snap a couple of times to get their attention. It's not necessarily considered rude. It does indicate sexual achievement, though, sometimes, apparently, that we found through our research. Um, so, just in case, they might be taking it a different way, just little things in the class that maybe you don't know have a meaning. It's just good to know little things like that. Um, Also, another skill to incorporate is music and movement, seeing that the music was such an important part of their culture. So, using music to reinforce maybe some vocab or counting, moving around the classroom. This will also have a good effect on other scholars in the class that might learn in a different way as well.
Bottom, there is a video link, watch an informational video or interview to learn more about Cape Verde background, culture, and a specific person's adjustment to America with a firsthand account. We just wanted to end with one last recording of the student who has been speaking, discussing the differences between Cape Verde and the United States.
Ligo no tenemos comida para morir, no governo que tenemos. And in English, I said, in the United States, we can't go out by ourselves because it's dangerous. And in Brav, we make up our own games since we don't have electricity. And we go to different cities without our parents. And in the United States, there's more food because we barely have any.
So we just wanted to thank you guys for listening, and feel free to post any comments or questions below.